Alright, welcome back. In this video we're going to have the creating these sprites so that we can actually have something to pick up. So what we're going to do is just click on our sprites and drag one of the sprites, which is our pickup sprite here, into the game. Alright, now we can't see it and that's because of the sorting layer. So what we're going to have to do here is change it from default. And if you remember before, we made one background pickups and player. We're going to put it into the pickups one. Now still we can't see it, and that's because the sprite is sort of sitting behind the player. The player was on top. Alright, so what we need to do is really just hide the player, because we don't need the player for the moment. We know it's sitting in the center. So I'm going to click on the player, and this is sort of its set active box to false. Okay, and so once we do that, then it disappears. Now our player pickup is still not there. Let's just see what's going on here. It's supposed to be in the pickups layer. The sprite render is on. I'm going to just turn off the background for a second. Okay, so it is sitting there. It's for some reason in behind. So let's just see what's going on here. Background pickups player. For some reason it's not showing up. And the problem is not too difficult to find. I found that for some reason I had set the sorting layer of the background to player as well. So I'm just going to make sure that that's set to background, okay? And so then our pickup appears at the top. So just make sure your background, okay, is set to the sorting layer background. Your pickup is set to the sorting layer pickup, and your player, even though we've turned it off, is set to the sorting layer of player. All right. Now, what we want to do is go back to our pickup and set a collider. Now, there is no collider that is exactly this shape, okay? But we can figure out something that's very similar. And so what I'm going to do is add a component, Physics2D, and add the circle collider to it. Okay. Now, again, we have the issue where it's too big. So I'm just going to reduce the radius to something that's sort of reasonable here. And so somewhere around there. You're never going to get it perfect, okay? Again, you might have to modify it based on you know, how well the game's playing, okay? So once that's done, what we want to do is basically create something so that the player can, or sorry, the pickup can rotate, okay? So we're going to create a rotator script, and that will just sort of attract the attention of the player. So what I'm going to do is add a component. You've done this before. So a new script here, and we'll call this script rotator. Okay, make sure it's a C# script. Create and add. Okay, and then I'm just going to clean that up as well, put it into my scripts folder. Okay, and then once I've got my scripts folder open that up. And so it's going to be quite a simple script, okay, where it's just going to be basically consistently rotating throughout the game. So this is going to be quite a simple script here. We don't have to worry about adding forces. It's just simply going to rotate. And so what we're going to do is in the update function, and like I said, because we're not dealing with forces, we don't have to worry about using fixed update. We're just going to do a transform. So again, we're going to access the transform and do a rotate. Okay, now there's a rotate around, but we're just going to rotate. And then basically we have to rotate it as a new vector 3, because we're still having to use the z-axis. In this particular set, we do have to use the z-axis because that's what it's going to be rotating around. And so what we can do is basically 0. Once my keyboard comes back, 0. Hopefully this will work. I think I lost this. Okay, come on keyboard. Sorry, it's being difficult. Okay, let's see if I can get this to go. No. Okay. Try this again. Okay, there we go. Okay, so hopefully I had to use the shift again. So okay, there's 0. So on the X is 0, on the Y is going to be 0, and then on the Z, which is sort of pointing into the screen, so it's going to rotate around that, we'll make it 45. Okay, now that's almost good enough, but what we're also going to do is make sure that we multiply it by time dot delta time. Okay, and time dot delta time is a way of making sure that it's sort of frame rate independent. It will be always turning consistently, okay? And it will improve the smoothness of the rotation as well. So what I always want to make sure is that I've got the proper number of brackets closed up. So I opened 2 and I closed 1, so I need to make sure I close another one. And again, there shouldn't be any red there, and make sure I put that semicolon then to close it up. So that's all it is. It's basically taking the transform, rotate it. It's going to be every frame sort of new, and rotate it basically 45 degrees. If you want to change this number and see what happens, feel free to. Okay, that number was sort of generated by trial and error, what works. And so what I can do is then go in, back to Unity, hit play, and see if it rotates. And it does. Okay, so we've got a rotating object here, which is what we want. So now that we've got one, we need to create multiples, and this is quite easy to do. Now, when you're creating multiples of an object, or you're going to have to use more of them, and even if you just use one sometimes, it's good if you're going to use it in multiple scenes, you want to make it into a prefab. And a prefab is basically like you might have heard of prefabbed houses or something. So they're built before, and then you can just put them in anywhere, okay? Sort of like portables at a school. So what we're going to do here is, to make the pickup a prefab, all I have to do is click on it and drag it into the prefabs folder. What you'll notice is that it says, now it's in the prefabs here, and then this has become a little bit blue here. The really cool thing about a prefab is I could make multiple copies of it, okay, put them into the game, and then if I want to change something, for example, I want that circle collider to be a little bit larger, I can change it on the prefab, and then all of the ones that are in the game, all the game objects, have that change done to them. So what I'm going to do here is just sort of zoom out a bit, click on this pickup, okay, and like I said, it hasn't really changed, but now it is a prefab. What I want to do though, before I put them all in, is just create an empty, and you can do it here as well. So I'm just going to create an empty. Make sure that this is going to be 0, and I'm going to call this my pickups. Okay. So this is my pickups empty, and it really doesn't have anything in it. Okay, I'm going to drag though my pickup. Okay, and now this individual pickup is inside my pickups empty. It'll do a couple things. One is make them much cleaner. If I'm going to have roughly 12 pickups here. I don't want to have them all sort of layered out, okay? Just makes this really messy, the hierarchy. And then if I had to sort of hide them all or do whatever I want to do with them, I know where they all are. They're all sort of sitting in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is move the first one to a location that's sort of reasonable. And then I'm just basically going to place them along here. And I hit Control D just to duplicate it. You can see that that's appeared in our pickups folder. And then I can just sort of move this one, if I can grab it. Okay, and I'm just going to sort of do a circle around where the player would be. If I want to just sort of show again where that player is to give me some sense of where the center is. Okay, click on that one, Control D, sort of bring them along, Control D, Control D. So I'm just placing them around here. And my goal is to do 12. And you'll notice that each item, okay, has a number. Oops, my keyboard disappeared. There we go again. Has a number associated with it. So I should get to number 11 by the time I get to the end here. And I did. So 1, 2, oops, 12. Did I get too many in there? I think I got too many. So let me just delete that one. That looks kind of weird. Make sure I selected it. Delete it. My keyboard's gone to bed. I'll just delete it this way. There we go. Delete. Good. And then just move this one. Good. So now I've got my 1 plus 11. So I've got my 12 pickups arranged around. Now if I hit play, okay, They're all rotating, which is good. Okay, and then I could sort of play with my player here. Now you'll notice that they just sort of bounce off each other, okay? We don't actually have picking it up yet. And we will get that to work in the next video. And basically what we need to do is have the player recognize what it's hitting, and we'll do that using tags, okay? And then once it has hit it, we'll make sure that that game object, the pickup, disappears and then gives our player kind of a point there. All right, but we'll do that starting in the next video there. So make sure you save it up, and we'll see you then.